Hello, welcome to the Daily Grind here on Latte Firm on this Bank Holiday Monday here in the UK. That was a bit of a false start there. Not sure what quite happened there with the title credits, but we are here and we've seen another bomber, yet another bomber. I don't think I can recognize my club anymore. Piero Hincapié, a left-sided defender, Ecuadorian international playing in the Bundesliga, has been linked with Arsenal. We're going to cover that story, and I'm delighted to be joined by my good friend and football expert from The Athletic, Alex Barker. Alex, welcome back to the firm. How the devil are you?
I'm very good, thank you. I'm happy to be back on. I think I've said it before, but this is one of my favourite channels to be on. It's always nice. You always get to go in depth. So yeah, very happy to be here.
Mate, I love those kind words. Really, really appreciate it. And people are very, very looking forward to this, and they're being very kind about you and the channel already. And Louis has started us off saying Berta has changed our lives. What a man. Funny to think he's still in his probation period. More about that later. Listen, it's an amazing sort of day. It's a very warm day in London. I woke up this morning not expecting anything apart from looking forward to tonight's box office clash at St. James's Park, which we might end the show with. And then all of a sudden, randomly, bomber just hits, and Arsenal are apparently going to hijack again another move that potentially Spurs were looking to do. So we're going to cover that, talk about playing style, strengths, weaknesses, your observations, Alex, and what you think he might bring to Arsenal, and get your thoughts on Arsenal's readiness and preparation for this season. A couple of quick chats before we go through. Vlad, welcome to the channel members. Welcome to Patreon members as well. After tonight's Monday Night Football, the Patreon draw will be done for the Mikel Arteta giveaway. Do check that out on the Patreon group if you are there. Vlad says, good afternoon, guys. Mind-blowing window from the club. We've gone all out. Only fitting that we end with a left back. Arteta just couldn't resist. Keep the chat active. Let's bring up that slide on that note. So, Alex, this is the storyline of what happened today. The Arsenal are indeed in for Piero Hincapié. And I sounded a bit French there. David Ornstein earlier breaking a story saying Arsenal are working on Piero Hincapié from Bayer Leverkusen, subject to player exits. Obviously, we've got a stacked squad now. 23-year-old defender has told his club that he is wishing to leave and he is prioritizing, allegedly, Arsenal above everybody else. There is a release clause of £52 million or 60 million euros at hand of Arsenal, and very shortly after, kind of backing that up, and he's been on point all throughout the summer for Arsenal, saying that Hincapié has requested Bayer Leverkusen to negotiate reasonably with Andrea Berta and Arsenal. The defender is fully sold on the Arsenal project. And then Fabrizio Romano, as he normally does, beating the offside trap and going for the tap-in, says Hincapié considers the Arsenal project is very attractive and he's keen on the move. Initial talks have started on the player side, but personal terms are not expected to be an issue. How did the news grab you, Alex?
Yeah, it was a bit surprising. Much like you, I was sitting inside on a bank holiday Monday. I was also thinking of doing nothing whatsoever. I think I was rewatching Daredevil for about the 50th time in my life. And the Hincapié news popped up on my phone. And my first thought, I'll be honest, was I thought that Arsenal, the barrier to Arsenal signing Eze was like finances. They had to have a board meeting. It seemed like there was a report before that Arsenal weren't in for him. If it's at 60 mil, then you go ahead. So I was like, okay, well, that's probably their window over, right? Until they make sales, sorry. And even then, it's probably over in terms of big purchases. So when this news broke, I was like, whoa, okay. Especially since Hincapié only signed a contract, I believe, in January. So this is... It is shocking on the Arsenal side, shocking on this side too, considering he signed a new contract. Maybe it was just for that release clause so he can leave easier, but it feels like it's moved very, very quickly.
It does feel like that. And of course, football is moving very quickly and unexpected. And we might maybe get some sort of further updates on as the day progresses and tomorrow. And in case also departures, Harry says, would love for us to sell Vieira, Nelson and Martinelli to get a proper winger by the end of the window. Layout of Fofana. I mean, look, we're talking about Hincapié, but of course, the demand lists go on. Paul James says, hi, everybody. Berta is doing overtime to bring us the best available talent. I am also doing overtime. I hope you guys are enjoying it. Lots of people in the chat. Keep it active. So let's take a look at the player, take a closer look at the profile as we normally do. Who is he, Alex? So we know that he's 23 years of age, going to turn 24 early 26. He's another 6-footer. Mikel Arteta likes to collect his physical specimens, let's say. Current club, Bayer Leverkusen, is an Ecuadorian international. I don't think we've ever signed a player from Ecuador. There's one for any general knowledges in the chat. If you guys know that, please do correct me. He's been capped 46 times. Preferred foot left. Can play centre-back, left centre-back, and, of course, in that left-back position. Now, last year in the Bundesliga, played 28 starts, 4 appearances off the bench. I know people don't really measure defenders by defensive metrics, but I like to chuck them in there anyway. 2 goals, 2 assists, and expected assists of 3.5. So does like to create chances. Dribble past only 0.5 times per 90, 3.1 clearances per 90, and a dual monster, 62%, which ranks higher than both Saliba and Gabriel. Yellows and reds. Now, this is interesting. When he moved over to the Bundesliga at the age of 19, in his first full season, he got 14 yellows and 3 red cards. And there was that sort of, I don't want to offend anyone from South America, but that sort of South American fire, that sort of aggression. And I think under Xabi Alonso, he's managed to sort of cool that and control that. So last season, 8 yellows, 0 reds, which is great. And contract-wise, he's on a long-term contract, like you just say, signed a new deal on £60,000 a week, according to a couple of websites. So look, player profile-wise, how does that grab you?
Well, he's a tricky one, I'll be honest. I mean, first of all, I will say we'll start on that last note about the South American fire. Hincapié is one of the most aggressive defenders I've ever seen. I was talking to some Arsenal fans that I know beforehand, shout out the Pot Shot podcast, talking to them, and they asked me what I thought of him. And as I was researching him for this, I was like, if you want me to sum him up in a funny way, it would be a slightly taller, angry Alessandro Martinez. His mindset, I can say, is like, if he sees someone free between lines or he's in the press, I'm going to get to this ball first. And if I don't get to this ball first, this man is going down either legally or illegally, I think is the best way to sum him up. But I will say statistically, he's a little hard to gauge because in the 23-24 season, he didn't play so much in the Bundesliga when Leverkusen won the title. Last season, he comes into the team a bit more. I think that's after the exit of Kosunu from Leverkusen, goes to Atalanta. Hincapié gets a bit more minutes in the side as Leverkusen centre-backs kind of shift over. I think Tapsoba's getting a lot of minutes on the left. He starts playing down the middle. Hincapié comes in on the left-hand side. And I will say, like, last season, Leverkusen were almost like a positionless team, I would say. Just because with Jeremy Frimpong, sometimes he plays a right wing back, and other times it was more of a 4-4-2, and he's just a flat out right winger. And what that meant for Hincapié was sometimes he'd be playing in a back three as a left centre back, and other times he's playing as a left back. And even in that position, he's still kind of held back a bit. So statistically, it's like as we get into his stats and like if you look at his dual success rate, for example, I can name his area dual success rate off the top of my head, for example, it's about 62%.
Yeah.
62% for like it's strong on its own, but is that strong because he's a left back playing it in the left back zones, dealing with players shorter than him? Or is that because he's very good in the middle and that 62% is actually him as a centre back? He's a very tricky player to measure.
He really is. And that positional versatility, I mean, I was reading earlier, look, I've got to be honest, I don't watch much Bundesliga football. Obviously, the story of Xabi Alonso's treble, the undefeated sort of domestic championship in the Bundesliga caught lots of attention. He was part of that. He's been ever present for Bayer Leverkusen under Xabi Alonso, and he's sort of, calmed his temper, as we've just sort of talked about. But positionally, moved into that left centre back role in a back three, moved, as Xabi Alonso moved them away from that back four. So defensively, we'll take a look at position in just a second, but has played predominantly most of his minutes at left centre back position. But I'm excited. I like your description of Lisandro Martinez, but bigger. All jokes aside, it hasn't worked out for Martinez at Manchester United. Has been sort of struck by injury, but I remember doing a breakdown of Lisandro Martinez when we were linked with him. And he is a very talented footballer, a ball recycling machine as a defender. He's obviously got that sort of temper, and he's been playing in a dysfunctional team for some time. So I don't want to kind of maybe use that as a barometer. But in terms of playing style, if that's what we're looking at, someone who's really good on the ball. There's been a couple of charts since the news broke today on social media, Alex. I'm not sure if you've seen sort of people plotting charts of how these players sort of progress the ball and what they're like in possession and out of possession. And Hincapié, he rates quite highly in a number of these sorts of metrics. So that's all really exciting. Just a couple of things before we talk about the actual sort of heat maps and whatnot. Dave's beat me to it. It says sign in for the Bants. And of course, we know, and this has been going around on the WhatsApp chats today, Thomas Frank there with a sign there for Eza and, of course, Hincapié. And obviously, Ebbs has joined us, and it looks like Piero might be joining and moving to the red side of London, which would be highly amusing. Let's move on to the serious stuff, though. Obviously, it's always serious to kind of banter off Spurs, but these are courtesy of the brilliant Cannon Stats. If you guys aren't following Scott on socials, please get over there at Cannon Stats. 3 charts here. The first one on the left, open play passes. This is really appealing to me because we lack a natural overlapping left back. And we had Kieran Tierney in the squad, Alex. Of course, that career didn't kind of work out with Arsenal because of injuries and, as much as we sort of loved the boy. But here is a guy who is making progressive passes high up the pitch, out on that left-hand side. This is exciting for Arsenal.
Yeah. I would like to measure against it, and this is where I'm going to become the disliked man in the room, I think. So I think the open play passes, I think passing, I will say at the outset, is Hincapié's biggest strength on the ball. But the thing you have to consider here is when he's playing as a left centre back, even when he's playing as a left back, I'd say he's often like the third man. So Leverkusen, their wing backs. You've played FIFA. They've got Frimpong, they've got Grimaldo, right? And ahead of them, they usually have the 3 in Wirtz and Schick or Boniface, and like Teller or someone on the right hand side. What I think Hincapié is able to do is he's able to push forward at a moment where Grimaldo has the ball, maybe Wirtz is occupying the centre backs, and he has a bit of space in front of him. And from those moments, he can play crosses into the box. So when you look at his open play passes, I would say this isn't someone who's taking on his man and consistently bombing down the flank and able to put crosses in. This is someone I think he gets quite a lot of space and time in Leverkusen's system and is able to put balls in from deep. Now, that said, I think passing is his biggest strength. I think there's like a really nice technique to the way he hits the ball. He can get a nice whip on his crosses. Also, think he has quite good vision. So in terms of open play passes, I wouldn't there's a context there, but it is definitely, I say, his strongest attribute on the ball.
I saw one very short clip, Alex, of him on Twitter today this morning, and it's basically him just bombing down the pitch and putting a cross in, a peach of an assist for a player. I don't know what game it was, who it was for, but I sort of thought to myself, yes, a speedy left back who likes to get balls in the box. Having not watched much of him, I mean, how quick is he? How athletic is he? Is he up and down? Has he got a bit of an engine on him? Would you know?
Yes. So this is interesting because some people might be aware. I looked at Hincapié earlier in the year, did a full scout report on him in January. And since then, the temptation here, especially when I was looking back at him earlier today, was let's, look back and see how, just add to it. But the mindset I went in with was, I think I'm a much better analyst that I am right now than I was back then. Much, much, much better. So kind of went with the attitude of how wrong was I when I did my report in January. And one area where I was really critical on him was pace. I felt like he was a very slow player. But I watching him today, I think he's a bit more nuanced. I think he's got a pretty good top speed. I think he's just quite slow off the mark. And we'll talk about that maybe a bit more when it comes to defensive actions. But it does mean, so you mentioned there's assists where he bombs forward. I can picture that. I think if there's space ahead of him and he's on the ball, he is someone who can motor down the flank. He's just not someone, let's say, who, if he's coming from a standing start as a player next to him, he's not likely to, burst away from them and send them the wrong way.
And listen, we're not looking for someone who's going to be top of the sort of speed charts, but it's just someone who is able to cover, the ground and eat up the grass that's sort of in front of him really, really quick is something that we want. Ben Mattinson, everybody kind of knows him. Congratulations, Ben, on your new role as well, in case you're watching. He was in the DMs this morning saying, look, I would describe Piero as a Ben White, but just better. And that has got me licking my lips. The middle chart there, passes received. Look at where he picks up the ball, the deep sort of purple sort of cluster just inside his half. He likes to play high up, obviously likes to sort of hug that left-hand side. That is a combination of playing left centre-back, left wing-back, left-back, sort of going up and down. Anything sort of catch your eye there? I mean, is that where you'd predominantly see him play for Arsenal, left centre-back, maybe playing that left-back role?
Yeah, this is a good chart, I'd say, because you have to remember in a Leverkusen back 3 and just in the back 3 system in general, I think you often Hincapié is playing maybe a bit wider than you'd expect an Arsenal centre back would, and I think that is helpful for him under pressure. So went through today just looking at all the times he's put under pressure in the Bundesliga in 2025, and he's quite often in a position where, as you can see on the chart, he's just wide enough where if he receives the ball, someone's closing him down from the middle, he can punt it down the line. So I think this chart's actually good to representation of how he might have to adjust for Arsenal, because if he plays at centre-back for them, then you could expect him to maybe be a bit more narrow and might not have that access down the line as easily. If he plays fullback, maybe it works out for him, but there might be more negatives to him playing as a fullback that we'll touch on.
I love the football community here that we built at Latte Firm. Addy's coming in with a stat, says the Bundesliga have him down as the 21st fastest player in the league, clocking 35.84 kilometers an hour. That is rapid, let me tell you. Kai Havertz's fastest speed is 36 point something. Marcus Rashford's fastest speed is 36 point something. That is quick, let me tell you. Clairvoyant says Berta is the gift that keeps on giving, plus he seems to hate Tottenham too, which is lovely. Let's talk about his defensive actions then. When we were talking about this before coming on stage, I was quite surprised how high up he wins the ball. You can see there that the squares are the tackles, 51 of those successful last season. The interceptions, the diamonds, you would expect them to be sort of bottom left, but he wins a lot of interceptions up the field, and ball recoveries, the round dots. He seems to be doing that everywhere, Alex.
Yeah, you actually mentioned a good note, I think, when we got onto the slide first of all, where you said he seems to be picking up the ball across the pitch, which is quite striking for someone who plays a very left-sided role. And, I think there's two sides to it. In fact, there's two ends to it. Let's focus on him pressing for, his defensive actions in that top half of the pitch, because I think this is where you get a lot of benefits to Hincapié. As I said earlier, he's an aggressive player. I think everything he does defensively is down to his aggressive mindset. He's always thinking, I'm going to get to this ball first, and if I don't get to the ball first, I'm bringing this guy down. And I think for Leverkusen, that's really beneficial as a left-sided centre-back, because he can just close players down really quickly, often catch them off the guard, nab the ball, and it's a regain that helps Leverkusen potentially win it. When it can go wrong, when it does go wrong, sorry, I'd say at best it results in him giving a foul away. At worst, it can leave him a bit. It can leave him exposed, let's say. So I'd say Hincapié has. He always tends to charge him from behind, right? And he always wants to try and get his left leg and hook it around the player in front of him to get contact with the ball. There were a few times I've watched him where. And this was a consistent note from my earlier scout report, and I was just refreshing myself today, where if that player knows he's coming, if they're able to shield the ball, they can kind of roll him and just turn and race him behind the space. So he can get left looking a bit silly, I'd say, when pressing high. But I'd still say overall he's a positive when pressing high up the pitch. Where I'd be a bit more critical is in the bottom half of the pitch, mainly defensively. So I think the actions across the pitch, and we'll start on the positives here, is in it highlights how he's a very not just aggressive player, but he has good anticipation. So goes hand in hand with his proactive nature higher up the pitch. He wants to snuff danger out. If he sees someone making a run, he will try and track them to stop them, and be that on his side of the pitch, or as we can see on the right hand side of the pitch. I think how this manifests itself in the most positive way is there was a couple of times where the opposition team, they're coming down their left wing. So if we're looking at this pitch right now, on the right flank, they go to play a cutback, and Leverkusen's players on that side, they're falling back towards their own goal to cover the near post. Hincapié, what you'd expect maybe a left centre-back to do in this instance is protect the back post. But what he'll often do is say, no, I can see someone making a run. The midfielder's not going to track them in time. I'm going to leave my position, get across and intercept it. And that is how I think his proactive defensive nature works at its best. Small pause. There's a fun fact. Adam Elmino said he reminds you of Romero at Tottenham. Hincapié says his brother actually compares him to Christian Romero. So you're on the right lines. And let's talk about how it can go, how his defensive nature, I think, can go badly. So, to be fair, this isn't necessarily about his aggressive nature, I'd say, but just more him as a player. So, as we said, I think he's a quick player when he gets to top speed. He's a little slow in terms of acceleration. There was a Champions League game against Bayern Munich earlier this season, a 3-0 game. I think this highlighted him at his worst. He kept trying to show Michael Olise down the left-hand side, the outside, sorry. So didn't want Olise to cut in on his left foot. Fair enough. I wouldn't want to do that either. But for someone making that approach, he also seemed deeply unprepared for Olise speeding down the right and hitting the byline. He just every single time lost a yard of space on Olise. And I think one of those times actually led to Bayern Munich scoring. So that was one way I saw it going wrong. Just scanning my notes a moment. The other thing was the aerial duel. So the reason I also mentioned Lisandro Martinez note is Hincapié, I think you said he might just cross the barrier of 6 foot, but he's notably smaller than most centre backs, I'd say. And the way he compensates this in the air, quite like a lot of other small centre backs I've noticed, like Yoel Hato, for example, is when a goal kick is, when a high ball is coming down, they will give themselves a bit of a run up so they can run into the ball, leap in the air, and like meet the contact. The way I described it to friends earlier, and this might be completely wide off for any basketball fans, is but how I imagine it. If you're trying to hit the net of a basketball net, for example, you'd give yourself a run up and then you can leap into it and touch it. What you wouldn't do is just stand beneath it, then try and jump and reach it. It's harder to, I think it's a little harder to gain that sort of height when you're on a standing start. And the reason I say this is because when Hincapié gives himself that run up to attack a cross or a goal kick, for example, he's generally able to like shove someone out of the way, get to it. He's a very physical player and he can be successful there. When it can go wrong is where he hasn't got that run up. Let's say it's a surprise cross, goes across the penalty box. He's stuck at the back post and he could just get stuck beneath like a taller player. That was a lot there. I've thrown at you. Apologies for that, but I think I've covered all the areas how I feel about him defensively.
No, listen, I appreciate it. That's why you're on the channel, and I appreciate all of the insight, particularly as someone who's not really watched much of him or can sort of, claim to say that I know German football inside out, particularly Ecuadorian football from an international perspective. So really interesting to hear some of that stuff, Alex. I mean, Xabi Alonso, summarized Piero as a player who is robust physically, who has youthful athleticism, and he's got an aggressive hunger to play either as a left back or the left-sided back. He converted him into a sort of galloping left centre back in that sort of 3 when he changed it from a 4 at the back to a 3-4-3 formation at Bayer Leverkusen. We know he's ever present. 43 appearances in 22-23, 43 in 23-24, and then 45 appearances last season in all competitions. And now that Xabi Alonso has obviously gone, he sort of said, he described him before he left as, modern defender, served us well at fullback, served us well at centre back, particularly in that sort of back 3. He's aggressive. He's making better decisions. He is a fighter, which is a great sort of character to have. Things to work on. Like you say, he's not the tallest, he's not the quickest, or he takes time to get to his quickest speed. So he might lose out to those really explosive wingers. And of course, from a temperament perspective, he came over to Germany when he was 19. He's been there now for 4 years. Like I say, in that first season, sent off 3 times and booked 14 times. Last year, booked 8 times and no sendings off. So, hopefully a bit of maturity there, but it's really promising to see some of his traits. In terms of how he compares to our existing fullbacks, these are heat maps of Miles Lewis-Skelly, Jurien Timber, and Ben White, courtesy of Optra Analyst. Ricky Calafiori's heat map not available because it's too small a sample size. We've seen some really good stuff from Ricky Calafiori this season, but we can see from Miles Lewis-Skelly, he is not the overlapper. He is very comfortable at tucking in, adding into midfield, being that overload, driving forward onto the edge of the box and being that creator. He is not an overlapping Kieran Tierney, whereas hopefully, maybe, this guy is going to be that guy. Look, closing thoughts, Alex. Obviously, he's going to need time to settle. He, presumably being South American, will be able to get on with the likes of Gabi Heinze and Mikel Arteta in terms of a language perspective. He will have teammates from the South American part of the world in the squad, so hopefully acclimatization won't be too difficult. But of course, been playing in Germany, he's used to the cold as well. Any sort of, how do you think it's going to be? A hit or a miss? How do you think Arteta's going to use him?
I think it's tricky to say, classic on the fence answer, but to give you like a more positive answer, and it's not just positive because I'm on Arsenal channel, but also because players do tend to improve, especially under great coaches like Arteta. Something I wanted to mention was you were saying how he's managed to improve his discipline, gone from turning red cards into yellow cards. I think saw one of the comments say it as well. And, I really would back that up. One of the things I noted in January when I did my report, which is based on footage from the 24-25 season, the one prior, was he had an insane habit of like diving in 2-footed, and not just for like tackles, but also when he's taken a loose touch, for example, and it's like, buddy, what are you doing, man? And I didn't really see that looking today, so I think like once. So clearly there's like improvement taking place, and he is, like, I think the most attractive thing about him, he's got that fire in him, and I'm the last person in the world to talk about this stuff. I hate it when Robbie Savage goes on TNT and talks about how he's got the desire, he just got the desire. But Hincapié is a player I think you love on the pitch, because he goes into every duel with 110% trying to win that. And
but you want to see that, Alex, you know,
yeah,
as
exactly, right?
you know, I know exactly what you mean. Sometimes you just think the way pundits describe players or football, you think, oh, it's just so easy, it's so lazy, it's just an obvious word. But actually, it genuinely applies to some players, some personalities. And as someone who, you know, goes to games home and away, if nothing else, I just want to see someone fighting for that badge, fighting for that shirt. Again, just chucking in all the cliches, but like, you know, we are going to lose games, right? We are going to get games where I think, you know, you have bad days in the office, but you want to see someone with their heart just leaving everything out there on the pitch. You can't ask for more than that, but that should be the basic minimum.
Yeah, I agree. And I tell you what, as I've grown throughout this year, I think that's actually something I've valued like more and more. So in terms of the move, like rounding up, I think it's difficult to say. He's also very young for a centre back, right? And this could work out. What I would say, I think at the moment, is I'd be cautious about him coming into the side and playing a substantial amount of minutes. I think this is still a player that's got quite a lot of room to improve, and maybe this is someone who gets you by in like cup competitions and allows Gabriel, for example, to rest. And that, as you can kind of tell by the way I'm talking, I feel like he's maybe more of a centre back than a full back. Something you mentioned before, I just get quite nervous about the idea of him, for example, being out on the touchline. He's defending against Anthony Elanga, and Anthony Elanga just completely leaves him in the dust. I think that is something that could quite easily happen out of fullback, and I don't think that's something that's going to like improve much about him. That's just how he is. Whereas at centre back, the main thing would be his aerial prowess, and it's not ideal, but as we said, he can sort of compensate for that in ways. And you know, Arsenal with Nicolas over the king of set pieces, so it's not like that's they're going to find a way around of compensating for that in like dead ball situations as well.
I think Anthony Elanga, to be fair to him, would probably leave a lot of players in their dust, but I get the sentiment. I mean, look, someone just mentioned sort of price fee, Rancid. I know that the rumours are that he's got a 60 million euro or 52 million pound release clause. I think Arsenal are going nearer towards 40 million, depending on who you follow and believe in terms of socials. There's also potentially a loan with an obligation to buy on the table as well. I'm sure Andrea Berta will work his magic, but something that we do need to think about, Alex, are potential departures. I brought up something that I've been calling or referring the Arsenal defence to as this season as our Ministry of Defence. And now we know that Zinchenko's into his last year of contract. We know that Jakub Kiwior is flirting with the idea of a move to Porto at the moment, although they've been lowballing us with really, terrible, offensive, low offers at the table. But it looks like it could be 30 odd million quid, potentially a loan move first for Jakub Kiwior. Something's got to give though, right, Alex? I mean, first of all, in terms of Lewis Kelly, Ben White, Saliba, Gabriel Magalhaes, Jurrien Timber, Ricky Calafiori, what a fine collection of defenders, and Christian Mosquera, who's come in and really impressed in pre-season and the sort of cameo role that he played at the weekend. We are stacked with top defensive players, so this would just be another fine addition, surely.
Yeah, absolutely. And like it's a left-footed addition as well, which is always valuable. Clearly, Mikel Arteta values left-footed defenders. That's something I've learned over the last couple of years. So yeah, it does feel. There's two ways of looking at it. And I might have said this actually before last time I came on the channel. You could look at this and say maybe this is too much depth. But equally, and a theory I've kind of been growing throughout the summer is I think top clubs, the Galactico clubs that my colleague John McKenzie calls them, the Arsenal, Liverpool, Chelsea, City, I think are the four that are quite clear of everybody else in the league. I think their approach to squad building at the moment, even City to an extent, is just in 2025, in this day and age, our players are going to get injured. It's natural. Look at the weekend. You almost lost Saka and Odegaard. You lost Havertz last week. It's just the way modern football is. And I don't think you can cope with like ultra small squads that prioritize not leaving players frustrated by lack of minutes. I think Arsenal just maybe one of those teams that are thinking, We just need to build a stacked team. So when we get those 5 to 10 injuries that we just will, because that's the way football works now, it's fine because we can bring in Noni Madueke, we can bring in Mosquera, we can bring in Hincapié. And hey, maybe they're not the best players, they're not as good as our starters, but it's not like we're going to have to find, playing Mikel Merino up front. No offense, Merino, you did quite well, but it's clearly not the situation you want to be in.
I think you're absolutely spot on. Addy's come back with another gold. Addy, my favourite chatter of the day, I think. Says sacrificing Kivior for Hincapié is a big boy move. It makes our defensive eight elite and allows us to move Calafiori to left centre back. Goongang says Berta is flexing. I am flustered, and that's how we're going to end the show. Alex, want to get your thoughts on Arsenal's preparation, because this boy, we've got to sign off his probation period at some point. Andrea Berta, this is his first summer window. Can you believe it? But look at all the stuff he's done. I mean, contract renewals, new signings. Eberechi Eze, obviously, over the weekend, as I'm sure you sort of saw. What was that like as a non-Arsenal fan, sort of looking in, seeing that Arsenal got their creative guy in Eze?
I mean, it is very cool. I will say, I have an Arsenal friend at work called Kaya, who I think was the Arsenal writer for Football London. So you might be familiar with him. And
I know Kaya very well.
Yeah, I'd been winding him up throughout the week. He moaned about me on the Tifo podcast, actually, because he obviously had the first game against Manchester United, hadn't gone well, and Victor Gyökeres looked a little off it. Then the Monday came, and it looked like Eze was going to Spurs. The Tuesday came, you signed a Trossard deal, which seemed very unpopular, and he only came into work on the Wednesday, and I was like, buddy, what's going on here? And one of the things he said was, I'm not actually bothered about Eze because I don't really see where he'd fit into our team. He's not a natural left winger. He's probably not going to play over Rice at left 8. So, it's annoying he'd go to Spurs, but I'm not upset by it. And of course, that evening, Eze does the U-turn and goes to Arsenal. And then the next day, he's like, well, I'm really happy about this now. And I was just kind of sitting there like, but are you? Because yesterday you were telling me how you don't really see how it makes sense. And I guess that's how I'm a little bit with Andrea Berta. I mean, my mindset is going to be completely different to an Arsenal fan because I just don't get the feeling that you guys will get, and I think rightfully get, when you see your club doing lots of activity. Like, to me, it doesn't affect me, but as a fan, this is exactly what you want. So in a way, I'm actually not qualified to talk about like how well Berta has done. It's just the thing I'll say at the moment is, A, it's really early to tell. Like, you sign a lot of players, great, how are they going to be? And B, I'm also quite curious, like, especially on Gyökeres, to see how it turns out, just because it depends on what report you read and like to the extent, but that really did seem to be a move that was pushed through by Berta over Arteta, and if you believe some reports like the scouts and analysts, right? And like, to be clear, I have no inside knowledge here. I'm just like you guys reading what's been published, and I guess my mindset is that feels, different to the Arsenal we've come to expect. I guess a lesser cohesive approach, right? But then again, you've gone through the last couple of years where it feels like Arteta's just buying players without a very clear idea of how to fit them in. So maybe this does all work out. I guess I would just say it's really early to tell. And without the dopamine hit of being a fan and seeing your club actually sign players you want and keep players that you want, I'm looking on the outside like, okay, let's see how this all plays out over the next 6 to 12 months.
I can't wait. I can tell you right now, as a fan, it is immensely exciting. I don't recognize my club. This is unprecedented pace of spend, volume of spend, spend of spend. Like, this is insane. And I kind of really want to put it down to the club recognizing that we've come so close 3 years in a row. And, you can't let these years of such a talented squad just go by. You've got to just miss add the missing pieces. And to your point earlier around, having that depth, it's something that we've craved for so long, Alex. We missed out because of injuries last year. I am absolutely convinced of it. We had the best squad last year, the year before, where we took it to the final weekend, but injuries absolutely crippled us. And this year, I think Arteta is, suffering from that sort of PTSD and making sure that we've got 2-3 really top players in each position to make sure that as and when it happens, we will be able to cope. And like you say, game week 2, no Kai Havertz, no Martin Odegaard, no Bukayo Saka, 3 of our most talented players already out. And, we've only played 2 games this season. Goon Gang AFC says, I'm at the precipice of having to send the Cronkies an apology Christmas card. They are acting like a big club. That is all I can say. I think we're going to end it there. Look, listen, there are just shy of 600 of you watching live on YouTube right now. please do like the video. Subscribe if you've enjoyed the content and you're around here for the first time. Liking the video is a massive help to the channel. It really helps raise the profile of Latte Firm on YouTube. Of course, if you miss these or don't like watching it on YouTube, you can get these as audio platforms available via Apple, Spotify, your usual sort of places, normally the day after. So do check into that. And if you want to follow Alex, he's available on socials at Alexander Barker. He is, of course, a content creator at The Athletic. Do check that out. I'm sure you guys have all heard of The Athletic. Obviously, you have. A couple of chats here about Rodrigo. You lot, you can't please everyone, can you? But we shall see what happens. And listen, tonight, box office at St James's, Alex. I mean, it's going to be fireworks for us. Obviously, we want Newcastle to pump Liverpool. But what do you think? Are you excited about the game?
Yeah, I am. I mean, I've spoken like quite on the fence here, right, about Arsenal. Like, it's just a very big season for you guys. So I'm always nervous to be like, you're going to do really well or you're going to do badly because, like you said, you'll all win now. What I will say is Liverpool looks very ropey defensive transition. Like, they were not in my prediction to win the league, and they are not. Maybe they fix issues tonight, but I am looking at them thinking, with raised eyebrows, let's say, more so than Arsenal.
It is going to be absolutely explosive stuff at St James's. Popcorn at the ready, says Ramsed Pumpkin. I hope we see a Newcastle win and lots of red cards before we head up to Anfield next week. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Really appreciate that. There you go. Piero Hincapié. He is the player that Arsenal are now apparently moving on. David Ornstein, Han of Arsenal, Fabrizio Romano have all tweeted. And there you have some thoughts of football expert Alex and me, my little self me. Thanks so much for tuning in. Enjoy the rest of the day. As soon as the Liverpool-Newcastle coverage is over, we'll do a very quick go live with the prize draw for Patreon members for that intimate audience with Mikel Arteta in just a couple of weeks' time. Look after yourselves. Take care. Bye for now.